Everyone, you're very welcome to the results of the first semester of the first quarter. If you need simultaneous translation, we have this available on the platform. So all you have to do is click on the button interpretation, the icon that is at the bottom of the screen, and choose the language that you would like to listen to, English or Portuguese. You can also mute the original audio, and you can just click on mute original audio. This is being recorded, and this will be available on the website of the company, where you have everything about the results. You can also download the presentation in English. You cannot open your microphones during all the event. Click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen and write your question. You will be in the line. The questions can be sent during the presentation, and they will be read live by the executive manager and also the specialist in IR, and they will also be answered after the Q&A session. The information in this presentation and other declarations that might be made during the video conference about the business perspectives, projections, and goals of TAESA are only premises of the company management, as well as information that is currently available. These are not a guarantee of performance. They involve risks and premises because they relate to future events and depend on circumstances that might or not happen. Investors must understand that economic general conditions, operational conditions can affect the performance of TAESA and can result in consequences that are different to those that we mentioned here. Now I'm going to give the floor to Cristiano Grangeiro to start the presentation. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the presentation of the results of the first quarter of 2023 of TAESA. It's a pleasure to talk about the results and achievements of this quarter. You can all ask questions during the presentation using the Q&A button of the platform. At the end of this presentation, we will open for questions and answers, when your questions will be clarified by the directors who are here. I hope you enjoy it. Let's then start. Okay, let's start with the results by the slide 3. It's always important to make this connection. That means the results of the company with our forecasts, because there's a direct connection. We have to remember that our mission, our vision, our values are the way with which the company understands itself. It is what it wants for the future based on important values, and it also defines the way that we work and our routine of the day-to-day of the company. Making a rapid introduction, our mission is to connect Brazil with safe and trustworthy energy. We want to be the highest value energy transmitter, and our values are to take care of people, to act with integrity, have trustworthy relationships, excellency in everything that we do, and TAESA is us. Now let's move forward. Let's go to slide 4. We highlight here, as we always do, an important step in our program of sustainability, which is the report of sustainability. Let's talk about 2022, when we publicized this week our sustainability report, the 15th report of sustainability. It's an annual report of TAESA. There we enhance several actions that the company has been doing within the optics of environmental, ESG, social, and governance. Some of them we also publicize in our calls of results. All of them we mentioned in several different calls that we've done during the last years, showing the evolution of the work of this topic within the company. And I'm going to tell you a bit the report that is available in our site. So if you go into the site of investor relations of TAESA and you go into sustainability and you click on general vision, you will access the sustainability session of the site. Going down here at the end of the session, you will find all our reports and the ones that we publicized this week, 2022. And when you go into this report, you'll see everything that we've done in 2022 related to this topic. Remember that the report has some dimensions and it was done in the Initiative Global Methodology, the IRG, which gives an international standard of methodology reporting about this topic. And we go in each one of these fronts. For example, the general dimension, we're also going to talk about administration message, all the actions related to this topic, how the company works, who we are, going into the strategic direction that has been approved in the year last year, our values. We talk a lot about this, corporate governance. We also talk here about this governance and all the actions that we've been carrying out in relation to this topic, a little bit about the company, the matrix that we've always mentioned last year, the economical financial part. We talk a little bit our results, our actions related to this topic, financial indicators also standardized within this vision. In the social and sectorial part, we talk a bit about people management, how the discussion of talent attraction, diversity and inclusion, whether it be gender, race, sexual orientation, among other topics that we discuss, the safety, health, labor safety, which is very important, and we discuss this a lot internally. We have norms and rules for this concern. And finally, the environmental side. We discuss here the environmental licensing, the safe system of the company, the integrated management, the gas emissions. We've done a new inventory here, and how we work and how we are evolving in this discussion is very important. Other goals, our own fleet, the usage of ethanol instead of fossil fuels. All this discussion has been dealt with within the report. So I think it's important to mention that this is a rich source of information so that the investors can consult and get to know a bit more about the company, especially the sustainability optics, which is a fundamental pillar within our strategic planning. This is a document that has also been translated to English. It can be consulted by investors that speak Portuguese and also the foreign investors. Now let's go effectively to the presentation of results of the first quarter of 2023. We are now on slide number 5, and we enhance the regulatory result, which is the result that reflects directly the cash generation of the company. That is the projects that we delivered during the last years and the efficiency generated. All this impacts directly the regulatory result, which reflects the cash of the company. When we look at the net revenue, we've had a growth of almost 14% in the annual comparison, reaching a revenue in the quarter of almost 600 million. And this has been a reflex of the projects that we have done during the last year. Comparing one year with another, this has a direct relationship with the operational entry of the projects that were ongoing. Looking at the EBITDA specifically, we have grown around 15% in the annual comparison, going from 454 million in the first quarter of 22 to almost 522 million in the first quarter of 2023. And when we look at the EBITDA margin, we have gone from 86.4 to reach 87% in the first quarter of this year. As I said, the projects that have come into the company and that we've put in operation, they have had a higher efficiency, generating a higher EBITDA than when they're consolidated in our business. And this has a direct impact for the operational results of the company. Now, looking at the operational performance, we maintain our operational indexes very well. When we look at the availability of our lines, we continue with a number very close to 100%. We closed the first quarter 23 with 99.88%. When we look at the variable parts, we've had non-recurrent effects in the first quarter of 22 and the first quarter of 23. In this quarter, we had mentioned that we would have a reversion effect in the first quarter due to that sabotage event that we publicized in the last quarter of 22 that ended up influencing the results of that quarter. But we already had a reversion perspective with a positive result with ANEL, because this sabotage was just a one occasion. So with this reversion, the VP result in the quarter, that means the accounting VP ended up by turning. But if we don't have this effect, we have a VP, a technical VP of 1.2 of the allowed annual revenue, which is very much in line with our historic levels. Finally, when we look at the regulatory revenue of TAESA, we've had a performance which is important to almost 50%. That means a bit over 47% in the comparison, coming from a profit in the first quarter of 22 of 146 million for a result this year of over 250 million results, a very important result for the company. As I explained, it's a consequence of all these movements that we've had in 22, putting important projects in the last year with more and higher efficiency. Now, let's move on to slide 6. We've broken a bit more the impact and the net revenue, the profit that we've just mentioned in the slide, where we show the positive effect of our projects. That means all these consolidated projects in the company, the projects that come in through participations and that have had a positive effect in the annual comparison because they started going into operation and generating cash for the company, and of course to finance this growth that we've seen in the company in the last years. We've had an impact also in the service of our debt in the annual comparison. So we've closed with a profit in the year 47% better, or almost 70 million better in the comparison between the two quarters. Now, let's go over to slide number 7. We're going to talk about the society net profit. It's the IFRS. You can see that it dropped for 31%, reaching 387 million in the quarter. It's important to mention here that we're talking about accounting net profit. That means it doesn't have effect on the cash. The discussion is here in the contractual asset. There's a whole methodology of the IFRS, and this does not reflect effectively the cash. So this drop is just accounting wise due to some effects. The main effect is the effect related to the monetary correction of the contractual asset, which is a society revenue. So the impact, the macroeconomical impact is relevant, which has affected the net profit of the quarter. What was this impact? The macroeconomic has an effect on the monetary correction, whether it be in the IGPM or the IPCA. And in this quarter, we've had a reduction in the comparison between the quarters of inflation, especially the IGPM. The IGPM in the first quarter of 22 had closed and they accumulated 4.6 positive, and the first quarter of 2023, it closed in only 0.6 positive. And due to this reduction, it has a relevant effect in the revenue of the monetary correction in the two revenues, about 200 million reals. This is the main effect that is responsible for this drop of about 173 million in the society net profit between the two quarters. Now let's move on to slide number 8. Here we comment here about the debts of TAESA. We see on the left-hand side of the slide the net debt, the historical debt of the company, and also the leverage level, which is the debt and the regulatory EBITDA in the proportional consolidation. As we had showed you in every quarter, our leverage level is about 3.8, reducing here to 3.7. And now in the first quarter, we've had an increase to 3.9, as the net debt is about 10.3 billion reals. This increase is due to an indemnity that we paid in lot 5. Lot 5, I'm going to talk a bit further forward, but lot 5 is a lot that we got in the last auction, where there was a condition of paying an indemnity of 870 million. We did this at the end of the quarter. We signed the concession contract of the lot 5, which is the Saída concession. And we have received an allowed annual revenue of over 120 million reals. So we got this operational lot where once more this was conditioned to this indemnity, and we will then receive an annual revenue the day after signing the contract. So this has a very positive effect for the cash flow short term. Now let's look at the right side of the slide, where we show a little bit of the amortization of the debt, where we closed the quarter with about 1.4 cash in reals, and the amortization profile with an average time frame of 4.7 years, and the average cost of 4.5 post-tax. That means we have an adequate profile to amortize the debt, with an average debt of almost about 5 years to be amortized. In short term, looking at 2023, we have around 600 million to amortize. So the profile is quite adequate to our business. And looking a bit in terms of the indexing of our debts, we have a concentration of the IPCA of about a bit less than 2/3, and 1/3 here relative to the CDI. There was also a recent increase in relation to the issuing that we did in the first quarter of this year. It was the third issuing of debentures, and we captured a volume of 1 billion reals, CDI plus 1.5. The corporate rating of the company at national scale, which is followed by Moody's and by Fitch, is the AAA. That means the best risk classification company that a company can have here in Brazil. And this is something that makes us different for new funding that will be done this year, remembering that the third was the mission that we carried out recently, and we were able to do this very well, even when the market, the credit market, is more challenging. Well, going now to slide 9, we talk here about the project status that we've got in the auction recently. But before we talk about these projects, in the last days, we've had 2 important events about company which took place now. One was the energizing of Santana. This was a 100% TAESA project, which is the transmission line between Livramento 3 and Santa Maria 3 and the substation of Santa Maria 3. We're talking about energization, which corresponds a bit over the 27% total RAP of this. So this is more or less 21 million reals. And given the other partial deliveries that we did last year, we've reached a RAP of almost 83% in the total of this job. This is the first energizing. So now we have to wait the release by the national operational system to then effectively receive the retroactive revenue of this date. This is also for the next event that I'm going to highlight now. Another important event that has to do with our other Ivaí. This is done in partnership with CTEP, and we also energize the substation Guaíra. This substation, it represents about 8.5% of the RAP of Ivaí. That means about 34 million reals. And with this delivery, we practically deliver the project. That means this project, we start receiving 98% of the total RAP, together with the last partial energizations which were carried out in this job. There were two important events that took place in the last days. These are advances, other important advances in the company in the journey of delivering our projects, obviously in line with our strategic planning, which is to keep our rhythm of growth and increase our revenue. Now, let's go back to the slide. I think we have to reinforce here that we got 4 lots in the last auctions. So we're talking about these that we got between 21 and 22, and the reinforcement of Novatrans, which is that we had the authorization with 2 REAs with ANEL, which represents about 45 million of RAP for a project that was more or less 263 million reals. So we're talking about the big delivery of this quarter was the first phase of Saída. Saída is the lot 5 of the last auction, the auction of December 22, and it represents a lot with more than 1 billion reals of capex, and we signed the contract conditioned to this. There was the payment of the indemnity of a bit over 870 million reais that was conditioning the signature of this contract, and this would give us the right of over 72% of the RAP of this project. So it's an addition of 120 million reals as of the 31st of May of 2023. Now we have the total control of the operation from the contract signature, and this confirms the premises. So that means that what we did when we bid, in line with the efficiency that we put on the bid on the day of the auction in 2003. So now what's left over for this project is to deliver the second phase, which is a revitalization of the project, of the operational asset. And this gives us an additional of about 46 million reais for a project of around 200 million of investments to be carried out up to March 2028. Besides Saída, we have Ananaí, which is a project from December 21 with a PAR of 159 million and 160 million. Tangará, which is a project together, we got together with Saída, which is lot 3 with a PAR of about a little over 100 million reals and a capex of 117 million reals. And last, Pichigadi, which is a smaller project, but still, we got this in June 22 with a PAR of 20 million and a capex of 243 million. It's important to say again, reinforcing the work that the company is being done of recomposing our revenue, sustainable growth, value generation for our shareholders as part of the pillars of our strategic planning. we are adding here a PAR of almost 500 million reals. So the volume really is relevant. Besides the projects that we have taken in the last quarter of 22, we have now ended our presentation of the results, and now we go to the Q&A for those who are present here with us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cristiano. Now we're going to open the question for Q&A. This is going to be live, and we have the participation of the directors of the company. Remember that to ask questions, you have to click on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and then write down the question. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for your presence. We have here almost 600 people that are present in our call. So we thank you all for the presentation. So we've already received several questions here. I'm going to start with a question of the investor, Thiago Augusto. He asked the following thing: 7 cents of dividends. Won't we have anything else this year? Why only you're giving these 7 cents the last day of the year? I'm going to give this to our financial director, Leonardo, to respond. Well, good morning to everyone. Thank you for the question, Thiago. I think that this question is excellent for us to clarify some important points of the company. First of all, in relation to 2022, or the results of 2022, the company paid 1.2 billion dividends. So in relation to the results of 2022, this is a residual value of 23 million, which will be paid up to December. You have to remember that the company has already paid 5 billion. So recurring, we've been paying dividends along these last 3 years. This is important. Why? Because the company is always looking at growth, leverage, and dividend payment. We're always observing not only the past, but the future to have a balance of this tripod. Another important point that we have to remember here is that according to the statutes of the company, we should pay at least 50% of the net society profit. So we're always observing this opportunities of growth, M&A or auctions, and the leverage of the company. Another important point, which I think is something that we'll probably mention here again, is the leveraging. What happens? This leveraging of current is a fruit of the investments that we carried out in the last years, the operation in the next years, and the increase of the EBITDA about 15%, and the regulatory net profit, which generates cash over 40%. So this leveraging due to these investments is natural, but it also deleverages when these jobs are ready. So the perspective of the company today is of leveraging because we are investing in new projects. We need to invest in new projects. We need to grow to be able to maintain this flow, this constant flow of investments, and this perpetuity of dividends payment. This payment will continue, and we continue to balance all of this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cristiano. The next question comes from Ricardo Matas de Souza. He's in investment. He talks about greenfield projects where you receive the RAP way forward. So he wants to know if it wouldn't be better to invest in brownfield. I'm going to give this question to Fabio. Can you please answer this question and also explain the difference between the two investments? Hello, everyone. Well, the company, as Leonardo said, so that we can keep this relevant in the market and also have the capacity to keep the levels of results and the payments of dividends, we are growing. We have 3 ways to grow: the reinforcements and invest that are asked by the regulating agency. We carry out this investment according to the PAR, the access to the secondary market, which is the market where the company acquires assets that are being sold by other agents that are doing an investment process. It's a competitive process where we pay and we receive this immediately. It's called the brownfield. And the third, which is the growth, greenfield growth, which are the auctions, the ANEL auctions, where the company it makes an investment and receives a PAR by the operation and the construction of this investment. These three are possible. They're very much analyzed with a lot of care by the company before a decision is taken. So what makes the company execute the investments? We make the choice based on the best capital allocation of the company. That investment that, given the conditions of the job and the project, makes the profit more profitable for the shareholders. So this goes through the strategy, how this asset talks with the other assets that we have at home, and also the question of profitability, how this is going to generate value to our shareholders. So based on this choice and on these detailed studies that we carried out, that is when the decision is taken how the company is going to grow and allocate capital. And last but not least, we should remember that this last auction, we got Saída. This is a special investment because it has a greenfield condition where you are going to have a period to build a part of the business that went to the auction and another part where you come in as an M&A, as if it was a primary market. You pay a value and you receive a value. As he said, it's 120 million that represents 73% of Saída that TAESA is already receiving ever since March. So this is the third or a new modality that ANEL has, and that TAESA has had the privilege of closing this auction and being very successful with this transaction and with the receiving of the prior agent. So this is, I hope that I answered your question, and we are available to clarify anything else you might have. Thank you, Fabio, Julian. And the third question that I think is interesting, we have several questions here. A third question comes from an investor, and I commented about the status of the projects, how they're moving on, but he asked for a bit more clarification of Bahia Santana. So I'm going to pass to my colleague to talk a bit about how these projects are moving on. Good morning to everyone. We announced this week an important announcement, one more part of the line of Santana, 247 kilometers, the Livramento Santa Maria part. And so we've finalized 580 kilometers total. As we've already mentioned, we add to the revenue 27% of the PAR with the entry of this transmission line. And also for the next few days, we're doing tests of an equipment, which is the Synchrono, which will contribute with another 9%. So for the next few days, we have a forecast of another growth of the PAR, and we're reaching the end of the conclusion. And Ivaí also, as mentioned, we concluded Ivaí with a substation of Guaíra, representing 8% of the PAR. This is a very important job for the region of Paraná and São Paulo, interlinking the south and southeast. And with the entry of Guaíra, we have another 34 million revenue of PAR of this business. As a whole, in the last 18 months with Janaúba, Este, Santana, partial Aimorés, Paraguaçu, Ivaí, partial with the first phase of Saída that I just mentioned and Fabio mentioned, we've added to TAESA 840 PAR. That shows how the growth is important for the maintenance of the payment of dividends, adding, as Cristiano said, the addition of our profit with these new projects. The other projects recent in the last 2 years are in the phases of projects, environmental licensing, and everything in according to plan. The next question is for André, our president. The question is, the investor asks, what are the expectations about the renovation of the concession contracts that will expire as of 2030. André, can you comment, please? Well, good morning. Good morning, Juliana. Good morning. Thank you for your question. This is a recurring topic here in the company. We've discussed this a lot in terms of concession renovation. We have contributed in the public hearing. We've contributed and discussed this with the regulatory agency and other agents of the sector, and this starts affecting us as of 2030. So up to 2030, we have no impact in our results. And from then on, especially ETEL, SPE, it's important to notice that remembering what Luis just mentioned, we've already put in the last 18 months of recomposition, we've added over 843 million to the company. And this, of course, has to do with the renewal of the concessions, and we're trying to grow more and more. This is part of our strategic plan. We have a clear growth plan, also discussed with the administration board, and we have a pipeline of almost 400 million for the next years coming into operation. So we're talking about 1.2 billion of PAR during the last 18 months, and during the next 2 or 3 years. This gives us space to breathe, and when we renew the concessions, and then TAESA will maintain its relevance in the transmission sector in Brazil. I thank you very much for the question, and I wish you a wonderful day. Okay, from my side, the question is to talk a bit about, I'm reading some of the questions that we have. We have a lot of questions. We've received a lot of questions about auctions in 2023, about the competition. I'm going to put everything together. Question of André Sampaio, an analyst. He says, what about the competition of the auctions? What about the financial crisis? How does this interfere? Could you talk a bit about this, please? Thank you. Thank you, André, for the question. Thank you, Cristiano. Well, this next auction in June, we will have investments of about 16 billion with the PAR divided in 9 lots, a total of 2.5 billion, which will be auctioned. This is an auction that has different characteristics from the others due to the size of the lots. These are lots that are larger than the ones that we've seen in the prior auctions, in a market that is a bit more stressed than it was in the last year. However, within this situation, we understand that the competition will be present with agents and investors long-term in the sector. We hope, and for this, TAESA is preparing itself in a very careful way so that we can, the same as the other auctions and the same PAR that Andrés just mentioned here, that we won in the last 18 months, that we are able to bring good projects to the company, and that will bring us adequate remuneration according to the risk. So the company is preparing itself. The issue of the suppliers that are being evaluated, are being followed by the company, and the way to mitigate this is always to work with partners, long-term partners, so that when we join the auction, we already know that this partner will be available to move the job forward. So this is how we're seeing this. TAESA is preparing itself. We will participate in a competitive way, always observing our pillars of sustainable growth, operational excellence, and financial excellency, with a good participation of this auction that's going to take place in June. Thank you, Andrea, for your question. We have a question about TAESA, the lot 5 of the last auction, that talks a bit, and the question is the following. TAESA was the first company to win an auction of operational. They would like to know how this process of transition panned out, and also how to take this over in a short term. So I'm going to give this question to Marco Faria, our technical director. Could you please comment? Good morning, everyone. TAESA, as has been mentioned by Cristiano in his presentation and by Fabio, was a big challenge for us. And it was exactly this challenge that made a difference in the bid. From the day of the auction up to the signature of the contract, we only had 3 months to implement all this process. And we internalized, we contracted 40 operational maintenance engineering people. And according to the auction, we could utilize the operation, but with cost efficiency. We took over the next day. It was work with a lot of competency of the team and good partnership. A relevant factor is the absorption of new technologies due to the retrofit of the compressors, and also a huge opportunity of bringing technology to TAESA. All of this is part of our growth plan, and we're always prepared for these new challenges. Thank you, Marco. I'm putting all the questions here together. Let me look. We have still, we have some repeated questions, but I'm going to give the questions now. Several investors have talked about capitalizing the company. This is something that has been communicated to the market, but I'm going to ask Andrea to say what can we respond about this topic. So Andrea, please, if you could elaborate a bit more. Well, thank you for the question and the concern of TAESA. I think this has already been mentioned by Cristiano, by Luis, by Leo, by Marco, by Fabio. We are totally focused in participating in the auctions and studying the alternatives of funding. And we evaluate constantly all the opportunities and the financing alternatives and the capital, the strategic and growth plan, and the pillars that we have, the operational excellence and the generation of value to the shareholders. We had clarified this recently, but just remembering, we don't have any formal decision of any offer of shares or debentures or any other thing via the capital distribution. This decision is subject to our governance, so approval of our governance, the board, the administration board, etc. So if this happens, of course, this will be carried out within the current laws and the applicable regulation. So being very objective, there has nothing has been decided and nothing planned at this moment for this in the company. So we'll continue studying deeply the opportunities of growth, whether it be via auctions, via M&A, brownfield, etc. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Andre. I'm going to also answer a direct question, which I think I can respond. I think it's José Neto. He said the cash value, is it pre or post? We've already announced in the call that we called this and we closed this with 1.4 billion reals. And this number is already discounted the payment of Saíra, which we paid on the 30th of March, around 870 million reals of the indemnity, and consequently, when we close this quarter, this value has been settled, and this is important. And the next day, we're already counting the PAR of 120 million reals as of the 31st March. So clarifying your questions, José Neto, thank you very much. We've received a question here from the analyst of the Safra Bank, Daniel. I'm going to ask Leo, please, to answer this question. Leo is from our financial sector. He says, thinking of the auctions this year and the leverage of the company, and since there's no covenants for the debts, what's the leverage that you consider comfortable for continuing to grow? Does it make sense to reduce the payout temporarily to reach this? What are the other alternatives that you consider? Good morning, Danielle. Thank you for your question. Well, in relation to the covenant of the level of leveraging, none of debts covenant, but it's an indicator that we always observe. We make projections almost daily. Any movement, it is whether it be M&A or participation of an auction or payment of dividends, we observe these projections. We discuss internally which would be the best way to generate value for the shareholders. So we're always looking at these projections. The reduction of dividends is a way to go, but there are other alternatives, debt, or even the equity. So the company is always observing and studying the strategic planning, the goal of continuing to grow and having the leverage level on a satisfactory level. There's no ideal number. I think we're very close to the rating agencies, and this makes us discuss all our movements, and each scenario, each case is evaluated in a different way. An M&A is a merger and acquisition is evaluated one way, the auction another way. It always depends on what is ideal for the company. Thank you very much, Leonardo, for your clarification. We have another question here. Comes from Caio Espiso. How does this PAR work in the different steps of the project? Caio, good morning. Thank you for the question. For each project, you have in the description the way that it's going to be received. So it depends on the time frame. You have some projects FVZ, you have some projects that depend on the production, and then you have, in the end, you receive this in a total way. You receive the PAR when the job is totally implemented. So this varies from case to case, from project to project, but normally this is defined when this is published by Enel for each of the lots that's going to be part of the auction. So it's Enel's notification. I think a lot of the questions have been replied. We have some similar questions. I think we're reaching the end of our presentation. So I think most of the questions have been answered. Let me see if there's anything else that we have to reply, but I believe not. I think all the questions have been answered, and we have a lot of people participation. I'm going to give the floor to André to make his final considerations and to thank everyone for their participation. André. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. It's very important for us to have the maximum number of people possible. And I want to tell you that TAESA is very well positioned. The results are very consistent, very much aligned to our plans. We have followed our strategic planning. We have a plan for 10 years, which we've managed to follow and improve the results of the plan. So you can be sure that we will continue to be healthy, investing, participating in auctions, evaluating M&A. So especially here, Leonardo, I would like to thank him. He took over the challenge 4 months ago to be with us. And Leo, as we announced yesterday, we are bringing a CFO from the market. Ronaldo Pecchi will come to TAESA, and we're going to continue counting with Leo. I hope to count a lot on him. I thank you and thank for the amazing work that he's done in these challenges of funding, evaluating scenarios, a lot of activities that are extra. So, Leo, in the name of the company, in the name of the directors, thank you so much for your contribution. You've already left an important legacy for us, and we have an important challenge for Rinaldo's coming. So thank you, all of you. Have a wonderful day, and you can always count on us.